My name is Asia Simpson. I am your wellness and benefits consultant. I support your benefits department, Mindy Hunt. She is here on the line. And thank you all so much for joining today's session. If you looked at the flyer, then you know that we will be talking about comparing your plan options and how to use your PPO. And if you have joined us before, you know that we share quite a bit of information. And at the end of it all, we do a raffle prize. I will also be making some announcements regarding open enrollment, and this session will be recorded. So if you happen to be in an area where it's choppy or you have to log off for whatever reason, this information will be available for you to review for recording at a later time if you need to, or if you just enjoy watching recordings. This will be available for you to add to your list of recordings that you look at. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mindy just real quick in case she had any quick announcements she wanted to make before we got started. Was there anything you wanted to say, Mindy, before we got started?
I'm just reminding everyone that tomorrow is the start of open enrollment. You can talk to me and submit the enrollment forms to me, or if you have a CVT account, you can go right online with CVT and make the changes yourself. And we have until September 18th to make the changes, and then open enrollment ends and your changes begin October 1st. We're having our health fair September 4th. So I've sent out a little bit of information. So keep watching for more information. We'll have lots of prizes and vendors there. And I'm looking forward to that. That's all I have.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And if you're just hopping on, just know if you guys are here for the first time, just so you know, we typically do a raffle prize at the end. We're actually going to do two raffle prizes at the end. One of them will be from me, your wellness benefits consultant, and the other one will be from Mindy. Mindy will actually be will be offering that one as well. So don't fall off too quickly before we close. That way you can make sure that you are able to be a part of the raffle drawing. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can make this big, and I'll make this a little bigger. All right, so hopefully everyone can actually see all of my screen. If you can't, please take yourself off of mute and let me know if I'm not displaying. So today we are actually going to cover a bit of information that maybe you are familiar with and some information that maybe you aren't familiar with. And we are going to talk about a few updates to the CVT plans so that you are in the know about how some of the plan information has changed. And so we'll start off though, before we get into all of that, is making sure I cover a few brief important terms that I think is going to be very important for you to know and just carry with you. And then because it'll be helpful for you in terms of if you ever have to call your insurance plan, or if you're ever reading any statements, or if you're going into your doctor's office, there are some terms that are typically utilized that it'll make it a lot easier for you to navigate your plan if you understand them. We'll also take a look at the plan options since we're approaching open enrollment. If there is any thought in your mind that you might want to potentially change plans, or you want to see where your current plan stacks up against the others, we're going to take a look at that and see how they compare to each other. And then I want to spend just a bit of time really talking about how do you use your PPO. A lot of times people have a plan and they're really not all that clear about how to actually use the plan. They've had it for so long. They only do, use it for a few services, like maybe just go to the office, the doctor's office for an office visit, and that's it, but really aren't clear beyond that. So we're going to talk about that. And I'll answer some questions that I get all the time, like which plan is the best plan for me. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I will share some tips around what type of questions to ask yourself. And then we'll close it out with a raffle. We'll look at resources and I'll answer any questions that you might have. So please stop me since we don't have a extremely large group. Please stop me if you find that you have, questions or something's not clear. You're welcome to stop me, and I'll be happy to provide clarification on whatever you might not be understanding. Okay, so I mentioned important terms to know. So there are a lot of different insurance terms, just to be honest with you, but there are four important ones that, regardless of what kind of plan you have or where you're going or who you're talking to, they're going to be four important terms that you really want to understand. And they are deductible, copay, coinsurance, and out-of-pocket max. And starting with deductible, I want to explain what the deductible is. I'm going to give you the definition. And then when we start talking about how to use your PPO, I'll show you where all of these fit in so you can kind of understand like what they really mean in the scheme of actually using the plan. Okay. So the deductible is really the amount of money that you have to pay out of pocket for covered medical expenses before your insurance company, in this case for you guys it's Blue Shield, before Blue Shield will kick in and start paying their part. Oftentimes it's they call it their coinsurance or their share. And so there is an amount that you have to pay first before they kick in and pay their part to help cover some of the medical expense burden. A copay, many of you are probably familiar with a copay. It's what you go to pay, what you pay when you go to see your doctor's office. A lot of times, if you have a regular maintenance medication, you may have a copay for that, a specific amount that doesn't really change. Usually copays are smaller amounts, but they can be bigger just based off of the service. But usually you'll see something like $20, $15, $30. The copays are what most people tend to be the most familiar with because when you go to the doctor's office, that's generally what you pay is the copay. Coinsurance is very similar to copay, and it is a thing that a lot of people really aren't that familiar with, or maybe they're familiar with it, but they don't really understand that they aren't familiar with the term associated with what the actual payment, and that is really it's kind of like a co-payment, but it's expressed in terms of a percentage, and it's usually for amounts that you have to pay that are larger amounts, but it also refers to amounts that the insurance plan has agreed to pay. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say you have a plan where there is an 80-20 split. And what that means is based off of your plan, your insurance carrier, Blue Shield, has agreed to pay 80% of the cost of a certain type of service. And this does not apply to every service, but certain types of service. So they have agreed to pay 80%, and then you would be left with 20%. And those percentages are called coinsurances. Okay. And you'll pay these until you reach your out of pocket limit or out of pocket maximum, which is the next term. And the out of pocket maximum is the maximum amount of money out of your pocket that you will have to pay towards the cost of your medical expenses during a plan year. And that does have stipulations. And we'll talk about the stipulations here shortly. But those are the four terms, okay? So deductible, copay, coinsurance, and out of pocket maximum, okay? All righty, so let's take a look at something that maybe you're familiar with, and that is in your health benefits guide that Mindy puts together that you probably look at every year. This is available on your benefits webpage. But let's break out where this information is, those four terms, where that information is on the guide. So if you're looking at the guide, the deductible is going to be that top amount. It is going to be where it says member pays. And when you look at it, it's in this case, we're looking at the PPO 6B plan. But when you look at it, it'll have an amount and then a slash and then an amount that's larger. What that refers to is the individual is the smaller deductible. The deductible for the smaller amount is for the individual, and the larger deductible applies to family. So if you recall, the deductible is the amount that you have to pay before your insurance carrier will kick in and pay their part. So if you are a person who is on this PPO 6B plan and it is just you, then you're going to have to pay $250 for certain services before your insurance carrier will kick in. Okay. The out-of-pocket maximum is the amount that I mentioned before. It's like in a given year, the maximum amount of money that you're going to pay out of pocket towards the cost of your medical expenses in a given year is going to be listed here. And in this particular case, for an individual, the amount is $2,000. So if you have paid $2,000 out of pocket for the whole year, then guess what? If it is in network, then the remaining burden of responsibility for paying for costs of medical expenses are going to be on Blue Shield. Okay. So then that takes us to copay. That's the thing that everyone's really familiar with. In this particular plan, the copay is $20. So every time you go to the doctor's office, it's $20. When you go for urgent care, it's $20. Specialists and consultants copay, it's $20. And those are things that you guys are probably familiar with. But coinsurance, as I mentioned before, is that one type of cost that a lot of times people are not familiar with. So now this gives a little bit more context to what type of service is and actually warrants a coinsurance. So in this case, if it is a scan like a CT scan, a CAT scan, an MRI, that is maybe your doctor order it, it'll say it'll be $20, 20% is what you're going to be paying after your deductible is met. So what that would mean, and we're going to do an example here. So when we start looking at actually how to use it from an example standpoint, I'm going to show you what that looks like. But just to give you the quick and dirty of it, if you have a CT scan that say costs $1,000 and you are this individual on this PPO 6B plan, you'd have to first pay the $250, which is the deductible. And it even says it here, after deductible is met, you would pay 20% of whatever is left over. So you pay the $250 on that first $1,000, and then whatever's left, which is the $750, you'd pay 20% of that, and then Blue Shield would pay the remaining amount. Now, you don't have to keep paying the deductible throughout the plan year. Once you paid it once, then at that point, you are just paying your 20% until you hit $2,000. Okay. Hopefully that's pretty clear. I want to just take a quick stop and just check in with you guys and make sure I haven't lost anybody. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box or ask me, take yourself off mute. But just know we're going to go into a little bit more explanation here shortly. I just want to make sure I didn't lose anybody so far. All right, great. Okay, so before we go into the examples, I want to just make sure I refresh everyone on what your plan options are. So all the options that you have as a Greenfield Union School District employee, they're all PPO options. And so all the PPO options do vary based off of deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, out-of-pocket maximum. That's what caused the plans to vary. So we've got the 2B plan, which that one is really going to be the most expensive plan, because that means that for you throughout the year, you'll have less out of pocket that you will pay throughout the year. And a lot of times people like that because they don't want to have to worry about paying extra throughout the course of the year. They'd rather pay more on the premium just so that they can have the luxury of having everything covered throughout the year. The 5B plan and the 6B plan are 90-10 splits, and those are the plans that have the next least amount of out-of-pocket throughout the year. And if you recall, 2 slides ago when I described coinsurance, I described it as being described in percentages. So this would be like a 90%, 10% split, where after you pay your deductible, the insurance carrier would pay 90% and then you would pay 10%. Same thing for the 6B plan. We're going to look here in a second how they compare so you can see, okay, well, if I've got these two plans that have the same split, well, then how do I know which one's which? And so we'll look at that here shortly so you can see which one might be a better fit for you. And then there's the 8B plan, which is an 80-20 split. And the wellness plan is a 90-10 split as well, but it has additional benefits to it and different factors to it that make it very different than the 5 and 6B. And we're actually going to look at that because there are some ways that you can actually get money back with the wellness plan for doing wellness related type of actions. So we'll look at that. But essentially, they do vary based off of, those things that I mentioned, deductibles, copays, coinsurance, out-of-pocket max. And then lastly, you have the bronze plan, which does, it will be the cheapest plan, but it will warrant more out-of-pocket throughout the year. And for some people, based off of the details of that plan, for a lot of people, it may not really be the best option for you if you have these other options available. So let's take a look at how they line up against each other. By no means is this all the details around each of these plans, but these are the ones based off of the 4 terms that I mentioned. And this kind of shows how they differ based off of those 4 terms. So this will kind of keep you aligned with what we've been talking about. So the deductible is the amount of money that you have to pay first before the insurance carrier will kick in. Well, I mentioned just in the slide before that the most expensive plan is really going to be that 2B plan because it requires you to pay less out of pocket. So when I say more expensive, that means whichever plan you select, you have a payroll deduction that is taken out of your account. It's like the premium that you pay to have the plan. And so this particular plan, Plan 2B, will be the most expensive. But if you will notice, throughout the year, when you are using your plan, you will have to pay less out of pocket. Now, you have to really gauge if this is the best option for you, and we'll talk about that shortly. But just based off of deductible, coinsurance, copay, and out-of-pocket maximum, you can see that you're paying more because there's not a deductible. Your coinsurance is 100% paid by Blue Shield, and your copays are still going to be, when you go to your doctor's office, urgent care, all of that, it's $20 every time you go. And the out-of-pocket maximum is a lot lower. It's $1,250 for individuals and $2,500 for singles. So we'll talk about that here shortly. 5B is it's comparable in a way. It's close to it, at least in terms of the out-of-pocket max. But you notice that there is a deductible, not a very high deductible, but there is a deductible. Again, that amount you've got to pay that before your coinsurance kicks in. So whenever you have a service where the out of pocket for you is expressed in terms of a percentage, like we showed before in that slide before, the CT scans, MRI scans, if that is a cost, let's just say it costs $200, then you would pay $100, and then from the remaining amount of that, the Blue Shield would pay 90%, and then you would pay the other 10%. And so that's how that would work with the coinsurance. And then the copays they do differ from the 2B plan in that they're a little bit more expensive for the copays. And so you'll see kind of how these things change from plan to plan. I mentioned 5B and 6B. Oh, there's a little error here. I need to fix this. The 6B plan, I believe that one is a 90-10 split as well. But you'll see with these plans also the out-of-pocket maximum between the 5B and the 6B plan, that is significantly higher. So when you're looking at plans that have the same split in terms of coinsurance is concerned, you really want to look at other factors like, okay, say the coinsurance is the same, the amount that Blue Shield is going to pay towards the cost of a service and versus what I pay is the same against 2 plans. But let me look at some other factors that might be important. What is the out-of-pocket max going to be? What is it going to cost me to just go see my regular doctor between 2 plans? So, those are things that you want to be looking at. The wellness plan I mentioned to you before, This plan actually is a plan that will allow you the opportunity to earn up to $400 in wellness credits that will be reimbursed to you for use towards your deductible and co-insurance expenses for you and your family, based off of certain things that you do. Now, regardless of what plan you have, whether it's 2B, 5B, wellness, all of that, these plans are all, number one, they do all have preventative healthcare services embedded in them. What are preventative healthcare services? Those are things like your physical, your well woman. If you're pregnant or expecting to have a baby soon, there's a well mother services that are really preventative care type of services that you should not be charged for whenever you go to see the doctor. And if you are being charged for them, you need to make sure that when you're setting your appointment, especially if you're just going to get, a well check, just a regular physical for the year, just to make sure everything is good, you want to make sure that you stipulate to your doctor's office, hey, I want to come in for a physical for my preventative care visit, and they will code that as such. So I have heard people say, well, I got charged for it. Well, you want to make sure the doctor's office knows that it is for, they should know, but sometimes it does happen where they code it improperly. And that is a mandate by the federal government. This isn't something that's optional for the health plans. So there are certain services that have been mandated by the Affordable Care Act. And that's beneficial to you because if you don't have to pay for services on top of your regular services, they're free of charge. You want to make sure that you get a chance to take advantage of those, especially if they are helping towards making sure that they catch anything from a health standpoint that you might be able to take care of before it progresses. The other thing I want to mention about all of these plans is that through CVT, all the plans are included with services through Physmetrics, Beacon Health, MD Live. Um, I don't think Alight is still with them. I did still see it on the CVT website, but I think Alight is no longer going to be a service that is available. And True Hearing is included in the plan services. So it doesn't matter what plan you have. It's almost like a plan addition that you are entitled to just simply by having your Blue Shield plans through CVT. Okay. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about the wellness PPO plan because I feel like that is the type of plan, that particular plan people know the least about, and there's always kind of like a question about it. So I mentioned before that with this wellness PPO, there are wellness related activities where you can earn up to $400 in prepaid redeemable gift cards that you can use for wellness related expenses. The first thing you need to do is you must complete step one, which is your annual prevention exam. That is that preventative care visit that I mentioned to you that is free of charge, that you are not charged for. So you need to, in order to qualify, the first thing that you need to do is to make sure you do that annual prevention exam or health assessment. And then from there, then you would complete the remaining steps. And so I have included in this presentation the link for that. No, there are also flyers that actually have additional information on the wellness PPO plan that will be available for open enrollment for you to actually look at. Or if you don't want to look at the flyer, you can call the 800 number that's listed here and they'll walk you through those steps. Okay. Alrighty, so I mentioned how I just did a carve out in a couple slides ago that showed the differences between the plans based off of the deductible, the copay, the co-insurance, and the out-of-pocket max. And I just carved out, there were a few errors in there. I'll update that before I send the slides out. But this actually has the plan information and how they stack up to one another from a same thing, deductible, co-insurance, copay, and out-of-pocket max. But it also has a lot of other information that may be important to you to understand how they compare that aren't shown by just looking at those four factors that I discussed. And this information is in your health benefits guide. It is on your benefits website, but I do want to call your attention to a few things that have changed for the upcoming plan year. And the first thing is the ER copay. I want to stop for 1 second and mention something about ER. I understand that sometimes there are extenuating circumstances where you really just have to use the emergency room, but I would strongly encourage you to utilize your urgent care and your office visit, if at all possible, to be able to get in to see your doctor. And if you're having a hard time getting in to see your doctor, I would strongly suggest that you contact CBT because a lot of times they can assist you with trying to get, help you with getting access to your providers. What can sometimes happen when you go into the ER and use that as kind of like your doctor's visit, if you will, over time, those costs add up and it could end up, causing overall ER copays to go up, which in some cases, that can be a good thing for, I mean, a problematic thing for you all with the plan overall. And so this year, the ER copay is about $150 when you are actually when you go into the ER. So just know that that actually has changed over the previous year. It was a little bit different from one plan to the other, but across the board, the ER copay is going to be $150. Um, for the CBT Bronze PPO plan, that is another change that has occurred. The out-of-pocket maximum has increased. I believe it was 6,000, I believe it was 6,500 or 6,250 last year, and 12,000, can't remember the total amount, but it has gone up, and now it is 7,000 for individuals and 14,000 for families. And again, what that means is this whole line that is referring to out-of-pocket maximum, those are the total expenses that you'll pay throughout the year for in-network services that you will have to foot the bill for. And anything, once you hit that, anything beyond that is the responsibility of the health plan. Okay, I'm going to give you an example here shortly where we kind of walk through what a given year looks like. So anyway, but what I would encourage you to do is to make sure you take a look at this information, see how they stack up next to each other. That way you can see which one will be the best fit for you. On that sheet, it breaks it out into several different areas. We have professional services, which a lot of you are familiar with. It has office visit, urgent care specialists, etc. But then there are other areas that may apply to you this year and maybe didn't apply to you last year, like inpatient hospitalization or surgery, outpatient care. So look at how they compare to one another. And if you have questions, that's a wonderful opportunity, especially during open enrollment and at the health fair, to reach out for questions on that. I will be there to help answer questions. Blue Shield will be there. CVT will be there. Mindy Hunt will be there. It's going to be a great opportunity for you to get your questions answered. And we're always happy to help you with that. So before I move on to the dental and vision piece of things, because I did want to, even though this is comparing your plan PPOs, I did want to just take a second though with the dental and vision, just to share a little bit of information that you guys may not be aware of regarding your plan. But before I hop into that, I just want to stop and take a second to make sure that there aren't any questions on what I have covered thus far. We're going to do some examples of this PPO, what it looks like, an example of what it looks like um, in terms of how does the deductible and out-of-pocket max work in a plan year. I'll do that in a second, but I want to check in with you guys. Any questions? Is there anything you need clarity on? Let's see here. I'm going to check the chat box. All right, that's a good question. Is there a limit to the amount of visits per year, whether it's an amount of visits or amount that is covered? Good question. So there's not a limit to the amount of visits. you can go as many times as you want. If you're referring to office visits, no, there's not a limit. Just every time you go, you will pay whatever your cost for your office visit is. And then when you have reached your out-of-pocket maximum, at that point, you won't be paying your copay, office visit copay anymore. However, very few people reach their out-of-pocket maximum just strictly by going to office visits. And a lot of people, even if they do have other health related issues, a lot of times, because there's quite a bit that is typically covered by your health plan, a lot of times people don't generally hit their out of pocket maximum. But in answer to your question, no, there is not a maximum number of visits. There is a maximum amount that you have to pay in a given year, though. I hope that answered your question. Cherie, you had a question? Cherie?
Yes, you mentioned that I should, or that we should probably do our best to go to urgent care versus the ER. I was wondering if it's like in the middle of the night, is there like another option?
Well, I don't know. I would have to check into that for you, and that would be a really good question where Blue Shield or CVT could pull that up. But I do want to say, I want to caveat that if it's the middle of the night and it is genuinely an emergency, I want to encourage you to make sure you do use your emergency services. But that is a good question. I don't know what options would be available from an urgent care standpoint. There may be, but I just don't know what would be in your particular area where you are.
And are we covered like still if one time I called and I had a doctor over Zoom or over the phone,
Mhm.
and there was another time like I had nurses on duty or something. Is
Uh-huh.
that still available?
Yeah, I think you're referring to MD Live. And yes, MD Live is still an option.
D lie?
MD Live, as in Dr. M as in mother, D as in dog. MD
Okay,
Live,
thank you.
yes. No problem.
Perfect.
No problem. So I've got another question in the chat box. Does the dentist insurance cover braces? Is it under our general benefits or is it in a different plan? It does to some degree. We'll take a look at this here. It doesn't typically cover, braces get pretty expensive. So we kind of have to look at whatever the cost of your braces are, but it would be under your dentist insurance. It's considered, I want to say, orthodontic services. And so there's a maximum amount that you are covered. And so beyond that, then you would have to pay for whatever the remaining cost of the braces are. And so actually, let's look at that here. So a couple of things I want to mention about the dental benefits, and I want to make sure everyone is clear about. This information, number one, is in your health benefits guide. So we've updated it to just make sure that we carved out and pulled out this information a little bit more clearly for you so you can kind of understand what you're covered for, okay? First thing I want to mention is you do have services that are covered between 70 and 100%. And they're broken out into different areas that they kind of are classified under. And you've got diagnostic and preventative services. A lot of times that's covered completely 100%. And then you'll have to obviously, if you want to make sure when you go into your dentist's office, you want to make sure of what will and will not be out of pocket. You can always call Delta Dental and they can provide you with an estimate, especially if you know what the services are. If you don't know what the services are and you want to wait till you get to your dentist's office, I can give you some tips on that. But this copay maximum section kind of breaks out like how things are covered. And again, with that question about braces, that does fall under orthodontic services, and they do have a $1,000 lifetime maximum on that. Not as much as we would all like to have covered, but there is some coverage. But just know that beyond that, then you have to foot the bill for that. But some things that I think that are important for everyone to know about your plan, the basic aspect of your plan in terms of x-rays, you actually are entitled, oh, sorry, know what happened here. You actually are entitled to full mouth x-rays once in a 5-year period. And if you've gone to the dentist, you know those full mouth x-rays are like those ones where there's like 8 million little plastic things they have you put in your mouth, and they're taking a picture of it and they say, don't move, don't move. And so you do that. It feels like a million different times, but I'm sure it's only like 5 or 6 different images they do. And so those are once in a 5-year period. And if you go from one dentist to the other, you can actually have that information transferred over to the next dentist. Don't feel like you have to get a whole nother 5 full mouth x-ray done at a different dentist. But then you have some other types of x-rays, which are called bite wing x-rays, and you get 2 per calendar year for children up to the age of 18 and 1 per calendar year for adults 18 years or older. So you do get those pretty consistently, okay? Cleanings. You get 3 cleanings or a dental procedure that includes a cleaning each year under any dental plan. So if you have a procedure that you have to have, and typically they do a cleaning, that's 1, and then you have 2 additional cleanings after that, okay? And then you are also entitled to 2 fluoride treatments each calendar year. So I've gotten some questions about that, and I want to make sure that you all know that is embedded in the plan that you currently have right now. So just know that information. I also wanted to mention to you that we did a little bit of a pullout for the vision information. So that information I would encourage you to take a look at in your guide when you start looking at the open enrollment information. It is available on your website now, on the benefits website now. So take a look at that information. Take stock of any questions you might have. This is a wonderful opportunity to get your questions answered. Okay. I'm just going to check the chat box real quick and make sure there aren't any questions in there before we move on. All right. I don't see anything in the chat box. Cherie, did you still have I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Did you still have a question, or was that from your previous question?
I'm sorry, I can't see my question in the chat box. Let me see.
Oh, it wasn't in the chat box. I think you raised your hands and you just asked it verbally.
Oh,
I just saw
was
that you have the raised.
earlier. It was the wellness link.
Uh-huh.
You displayed it and you said click on it and get an appointment.
No, I said click on it and you can find out the additional steps that you would need to take. Yes, you can do that, or you can call the 800 number.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No problem. All righty. So let's go ahead and I want to do a quick little check-in with you guys. All right. Up, not too quick. My hands are moving too fast today. Okay, so I'd like to get a volunteer, if you will, a brave soul, who could tell me, based off of what we've covered already, what is the difference between out-of-pocket maximum and the deductible? Does anybody know? Are you brave enough to throw that answer out there, even in the chat box, even if you want to put it in the chat box? And no, don't worry if you're wrong. I just want to see the effort. I want to just see that you guys are understanding what we're talking about here. Anyone brave enough? All right. Out of pocket is what you pay after insurance, and deductible is what you pay every time. Close, but not quite. So out of pocket is the maximum amount of money in a whole plan year that you will pay towards the cost of your medical expenses. And deductible is what you will pay before the insurance carrier will kick in. Correct. Most money out of pocket you'll pay, yes. And the amount you have to pay out of pocket before services are applied. Correct. That is correct. Thank you guys for your effort. One more effort though. What's the difference? This one's a little easier. The difference between coinsurance and copayment. Anybody want to try? This one's a little easier. Going once, going twice. All right. Okay, so the difference between co-insurance and a copay is what you pay at the doctor's office for the visit. Correct. That is absolutely correct. And co-insurance it's similar to copay, but it is the amount that you would pay for services for plan services, and they're expressed in as a percentage. So it shows what your percentage would be versus what Blue Shield's percentage would be. All right, so let's put this into context. Let's put this into a real life example so you'll understand what these concepts mean, like how do they apply in a plan. So I want to first stipulate that this is an example that's made up. It is not based off of any of your plan options or anything like this. It's just simply for example's sake, okay? So in this particular example, you as the plan holder have a health plan that goes from January to December, just for simplicity's sake, right? Goes from January to December. Your deductible is $1,500. Your coinsurance is 20%, and your out-of-pocket maximum is $5,000. Okay, so let's just say we're at the beginning of the year. You haven't really paid anything out of pocket yet, right? You haven't reached your $1,500 deductible. You haven't had to pay a bunch of anything, so you're definitely not at your out-of-pocket limit. But let's just say you go into the doctor's office and the doctor's office says the service is going to be $125. And let's just say in this example, the copay is at $125. Now we know none of your plans would ever be like that, which is a great thing. But in this example, let's just say the copay is $125. So in this case, you pay the full $125. Your plan pays nothing. Okay. Well, let's just say that you end up having to go to the doctor, and a lot of times throughout the course of the year, and lo and behold, you have to you reach your deductible of $1,500. Let's just say you just had a lot of different doctor services that added up to $1,500. So I want to stop for a second here and say that there is more than one way that you can reach your deductible. You can reach your deductible by having to have all these separate visits where they're, one $20 here, $30 here. If you have that many visits where it adds up to $1,500, it can actually help cover your deductible, whatever that might be. In this particular case, the deductible is $1,500. And in the example I'm giving you, by the time you hit partway through the year, you've already hit that $1,500. Well, let's just say that you end up having to have a service where you actually have to pay a coinsurance. And let's just say this service is $75. Well, because the service is $75 and you've already hit your $1,500 deductible, you at this point only have to pay 20% because your coinsurance is 20% and the plan's coinsurance is 80%. So you pay $15 and the plan pays $60. Okay? And the only reason that you had to pay $15 in this case and the plan paid 60 was because you already paid the 1,500. Had you not hit your deductible, you would have actually had to pay for the full amount of the service because you would not have hit the $1,500, so you would not have been eligible for the 80-20 split. Okay? So let's just say this is not the greatest year for you in terms of having to see the doctor. And let's say we hit worst case scenario and you have come out of pocket to a total of $5,000. Now let's go ahead and remember that the out-of-pocket limit in this particular example is $5,000. So let's just say that you have another doctor's visit, and by this time you've already paid the $5,000, and they say, "Oh, the bill is $200." Well, the great thing for you is because you've hit that $5,000, you can say, well, it's not my bill to pay. You pay $0 and the plan pays $200. Because once you hit that limit and you are going to see a provider who is within your plan network, you will not be responsible for paying for the cost of medical expenses that are, that are in a given year where you have hit the $5,000. Okay. Any questions on that? I'm not sure if that actually helps provide clarity on how deductible copays and coinsurances kind of play into things. Okay. All righty, so let's go ahead and move on to a knowledge check. I want to see if you really do understand this. And we'll do this knowledge check. And this one the winner of this one will be eligible for a $10 Amazon gift card. So let's just sweeten the pot a little bit. All righty. I would have to check to see. That's a good question. I would have to check to see if that's on formulary. Formulary is something that tells what drugs are covered under your insurance, but formulary is also something that can change throughout the year as new drugs are brought to market, as changes to drugs are made, changes in cost to drugs change. A drug could be on formulary 1 month and not on the next. So we would have to check and see. But typically I will say that that particular drug could be covered if you are diabetic. But we'd have to check. All right, so thank you for your question. So for a $10 Amazon gift card, here is our example. Let's say the following amounts apply to your plan at the beginning of your plan year, and you happen to need a lot of treatment for a serious condition. If the allowable costs are $12,000, what are your costs for this service? Hint, your deductible on this is $3,000. Your coinsurance, which your portion that you would have to pay after your deductible, is 20%. And your out-of-pocket max is $6,850. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to, let's say 3 minutes. And if you're going to drop your answer in the chat box and see if you want to give it a go. Let's see if there's anybody casting their lot here. What do you think this might be? And feel free to take yourself off mute if you want to just shout out your answer. You can do that too. Ooh, okay. Okay. All right, good try, Esmeralda. I'll let you guys know in a second if you're right. Okay. We got 2 people in there who have thrown in their answer. See if there's anybody else that wants to give it a try. Anybody else? I'll give you guys 1 more minute. Okay. One more minute. All right. So I'm going to close it right now. I'm going to close out the opportunity right now at Juana Preciado. Okay. All right. So looks like the people who tried are Esmeralda, Howard, Adrian, Cherie, and Juana. So the answer is 4,800. Okay. So that would mean Esmeralda and Adrian, you guys got the answer right. So $10 Amazon gift cards for you guys. But let's talk about why that is right. So our allowable cost is $12,000. Before anything, and anything can even be calculated, we have to pay our deductible. The deductible is $3,000. So you would subtract the $3,000 off of that $12,000. That's, you got to pay that out the gate. Got to pay to play on that one, right? Whatever is left over is where then you have to try to figure out how much you pay and how much the insurance company is going to pay. And in this case, based off of what's left over after you deduct the $3,000 is $1,800. Okay, so you would have the $3,000 plus $1,800, and because your out-of-pocket maximum is $6,850, you're stuck with paying the full $4,800 since it's under your maximum. So $4,800 is what the out-of-pocket amount that you would have to pay, total cost of services for this particular example. So good try. For everyone who put their answer in, I appreciate the effort. Even if you didn't get it right, still appreciate the effort. I'm glad that you guys were thinking. Esmeralda and I don't know if it's Adrian or Adriana. I think it's Adriana Rayo, but can you please both send me a message with the email address that you want your $10 Amazon gift cards sent to? Okay. All right. So the next question I get is, what plan is best for you? Well, honestly, every scenario is different. And there are two primary things that I always encourage people to consider when it comes to really trying to figure out what plan is best for you. And honestly speaking, you often have to do this each year because things can change for you from one year to the next. Financially, not only just financially, but also size of your family as well. Things can change in that aspect, and that can change what type of plan you need. So what I mean by that is financially, you have to gauge whether or not the current plan you're on is a plan that you can afford, or if the current plan that you're on is meeting your needs throughout the year. So two things you want to consider about the financial aspect of things are the amount that you have to pay out of pocket from your payroll deduction to actually just have the plan. And then looking at the plan to see, okay, well, I've got this plan. What am I going to be responsible for throughout the course of the year? And that's why you want to look at things like copay, coinsurance, out-of-pocket max, deductible. Those are things that are going to show you what you've got to pay throughout the year. The amount that you have to pay out of paycheck, that is really just what you have to pay just to have the plan. So you kind of have to think about, is this a plan that is going to meet my needs throughout the year? And is this a plan that is going to meet the needs of my family? The other thing you need to really be thinking about is from a health circumstance standpoint. Sometimes you have a year where you really don't need to go to the doctor. You're just pretty healthy. And then sometimes you have a year where you have just a health issue that maybe you didn't have in previous years that does require you to see the doctor more. And so you may want to consider a plan that covers more of your expenses throughout the course of the year. When you're running into situations like this, I know that sometimes it's very difficult to make a decision. I'm always happy to sit with you one-on-one, and we can kind of talk through this, where we can compare plans from a very personal standpoint, and not generalizing. Sometimes in the presentations we have to give general information, but it may be easier for us to sit one-on-one. And so that is something that I'm very happy to do with you. But those are things you really do have to consider. So there cannot really be a one-size-fits-all answer to this question because everyone's health situation is very different. And even when you have two people whose financial circumstances or family size may be the same, there may be still some variances that can dictate, for one person needing one type of plan versus another person needing a different type of plan. So just know that sometimes you get advice from family and from friends about what type of plan, And not that that's not information that isn't valuable, but take it all with a grain of salt. And always make sure that you think about what your specific needs are, and that you may need something different than the person giving you advice about your health plan. Questions to ask yourself, I think, are important, just as a basis. How much coverage do you need? And will you need it just for yourself? Or do you have a family? Or are you planning to have a family this year? Um, does the network have the doctors and hospitals that you want? And what are the out-of-pocket costs, such as your premiums, meaning what are you paying out of your paycheck? Deductibles, co-pays, pharmacy costs. Those are things that you want to look at. And that's why that side-by-side document that I showed you is very important. Take a look at your health benefits guide. That's actually going to be very beneficial. Okay. All right, everybody. It's raffle time. Before we do raffle, I do want to mention that this slide, downloadable resources will be available to you. This will be sent to you along with the recording. And so, but this does have links for the website provider search, where you can actually search for doctors, hospitals, whatnot in certain areas. Say you want to switch, has the link for there. There's the CVT website that has the medical plans. It's also on your benefits webpage. The number for Blue Shield, Physmetrics, if you want to talk to CVT about some of the value added services that we talked about earlier, like your Physmetrics, you've got your Carelon, they will all be at the benefits fair as well. And then, of course, you've got Mindy Hunt, your benefits department, and I myself, which is your patient advocate and wellness advisor, I'm here to assist you as well. So those are resources available to you.